folks, howdy. All right, today we're going to talk about Uncle Pen. Going to talk about Uncle Pen, the tune, and how it's played, and then how I played it. How Red Taylor played it in 1950 on Bill Monroe's Decca record of it, the original recording of it. And then we're also going to talk about Uncle Pen and who he was. Uncle Pen was a real guy. Uncle Pen's name was Pendleton Vandiver. And he was Uncle Pen. Let me start over again. And we're also going to talk about Uncle Pen. Uncle Pen was a real person. His name was Pendleton Vandiver, and he was Bill Monroe's mother's brother. So Bill's Uncle Pen was indeed Bill Monroe's Uncle Pen. Now, Uncle Pen was an old-time fiddle player. It's hard for me to get to talk about that and not talk like Bill Monroe. Uncle Pen was an old-time fiddler, you see, and he lived up around Rosine, and he was the fiddler, best fiddler in that country, and all the square dances and all that parties and things that people would have, they would always get Uncle Pen to come because he had the most wonderful shuffle with the bow that you ever heard, and he could really keep time with it. And the square dancers, they loved that, you see, because it really helped them with their dancing, that there was good time to it and rhythm. And that's where the timing for bluegrass music come in. It all come from Uncle Pen, Uncle Pen's fiddle. So Bill Monroe and I used to talk a lot about Uncle Pen, and I would ask him different things about Uncle Pen and how he played, and the shuffle with the bow and all that. What exactly was Bill talking about? I thought I knew, but I wanted to make sure I was correct. And I would add a lot of things with Bill Monroe. I would ask him several times at different times. So I would ask him maybe 2 a.m, coming from a show in Roanoke, Virginia, going to Pennsylvania or something. I would get him talking about it again. Always just to see if there was even another little piece of information or something that he would recall, or maybe it would, trigger a different story than I'd heard. He told me a lot of great stories about Uncle Pen. One of my favorites was Bill talked about when Bill's dad and Bill's mom were courting up in Kentucky. The way that they went about that back then was Uncle Pen was like the chaperone, if you will. And so Uncle Pen would walk with Bill's mother down to, I guess, like a creek, a creek or a river, separated where Bill's father was and Bill's mother-to-be was across the way. And Uncle Pen and Bill's mom would come and sit down on that side over there, and Bill's father would swim the creek, whichever it was, we'll just say river, swim the river to the other side and go up there and sit with her, and that was courtship as it was, in the late 1800s. And so I used to love the way Bill Monroe would talk about it. He'd say, my father used to go there and he'd swim across the river there and go up there and sit with my mother, and Uncle Pen would be kind of up there, just sitting back behind him. And he said my father would go up there and swim across the river, and he said he swam across the river 3 times, and the 3rd time they went and got married. So that's how it was, they courted, Bill's dad went to see her a couple times, swam the river, swam back across, and the 3rd time Bill's mom and dad got married. And so, long about September 13th, 1911, several years later, Bill Monroe was born in Rosine, Kentucky, and grew up a very musical family. His mom played the fiddle. His mother played the guitar. Of course, his older brothers played. One of the older brothers played some fiddle. I don't know if it was Harry or which one was, but one of them played some fiddle. And then, of course, Birch Monroe, that all of us knew. Birch Monroe played fiddle, and Charlie Monroe played guitar. And, of course, the Monroe Brothers band that started recording on the Bluebird label in 1936 was Charlie Monroe playing guitar and Bill Monroe playing the mandolin. But we're going to go back to Bill was born September 13th, 1911. Bill's mother died when Bill was young, and so he lived there with his father in the old home place that you can still see when you go visit it up in Rosine, out on Jerusalem Ridge. And Bill always pronounced it Jerusalem's Ridge. But the tune Jerusalem Ridge has become so popular that people now refer to that as just Jerusalem Ridge, which is where the old home place sits, and it's fantastic to go visit. Everybody needs to do that and see that, and see where Bill came from, see where he grew up. A lot of people, I think, have a kind of a misconception, thinking about Bill Monroe being from Kentucky, and they automatically think of Eastern Kentucky, where so many musicians, Bobby Osborne, Sonny Osborne, Kenny Baker, Keith Whitley, Ricky Skaggs, were all from Eastern Kentucky. And what that part of the country looks like is, I think, often, what people think of when they think about Bill Monroe being from Kentucky. But everybody really should go to Ohio County in Rosine, Kentucky, and see where Bill's from. And you'll see that it's entirely different terrain. Western Kentucky looks just like southern Indiana, where I grew up. The same kind of, real hilly, nice, beautiful rolling hills. A lot of people were in timber and that kind of work, which is what his family had been doing. And so Bill Monroe's mother passed away when he was young, and he lived there with his dad. And then his dad passes away, and Bill's a young man in the area, neighborhood of 16 years old. So he stayed with Uncle Pen. And they would go play square dances and stuff, and Bill would play guitar, and Uncle Pen would play the fiddle. And one of the things that Bill Monroe mentioned to me about Uncle Pen was Uncle Pen played a lot of stuff with the the D and the G tuned up so that you had tuned straight across. So he would tune both of those, so you and guys did that a lot back then, because if you think about playing a dance, a square dance, and of course no PA, nothing like that, no sound system of any kind, and you got a bunch of people dancing, clogging and doing the Kentucky backstep and all that stuff, making a lot of noise. So actually the fiddle and the guitar were actually trying to make as much volume as they could. So there was a whole lot of that stuff that we use in our fiddle styles today, so you get all that kind of business. Lots of double stops, but the double stops are all in the fiddle tune world, And one of the ingenious things about the record of Uncle Pen is that the play out is Jenny Lind, which was Bill's favorite tune that Uncle Pen played. And when they thought of that and putting that on the record, it couldn't be any better. I mean, one of the great things about that song, the thing that meant the most to Bill Monroe about the song Uncle Pen was, as he would always say, it is a true song. So everything in that song, everything in the lyric is true. He played an old piece called The Soldier's Joy. Well, Uncle Pen played, Soldier's Joy, the fiddle tune. Played an old piece called The Soldier's Joy, kind of how Bill played it on the mandolin. Played on a piece called Soldier's Joy, and the one called Boston Boy, which is their... The thing about Boston Boy that is actually the cool part of the tune is how you... But the old-time fiddle playing that he did, so Jenny Lind, which we've talked at length about in, the study of the tune, Uncle Pen, he had the bass strings tuned up, so it would probably. Which we're going to get into a lot when we analyze Sally Gooden. We're going to, our lesson on Sally Gooden is really in depth and has all kinds of things about, the bowing. But the things I want you to get from this part of our lesson on Uncle Pen is he was a real guy. He was one of two of Bill Monroe's biggest influence. The other big influence was a guitar player named Arnold Schultz. And Bill would always pronounce his name, Arnold Schultz, like that. And he played blues guitar. Was a blues guitar player that lived in Rosine, and we're going to get into things about the way he played guitar that have a lot to do with how Bill Monroe played the mandolin. So, think about Bill being the very young man, Bill Monroe, and hearing this, I'm going to play you a little bit of kind of how old-time fiddle players from that era and that area played, because Bill grew up not all that far from where I grew up, and I'll give you just a little taste of how old-time fiddle players play. And it was all about the rhythm, much less about the notes, all about the rhythm, all about the right hand, and the left hand just played the melody, but the right hand did all the dance beat. I called it dance beat, the dance beat stuff. Anything you can do to make it more rhythmic, which is something I still do. All my recording sessions, the records I've played on, that has always been, one of the things that I really wanted to accomplish was how to make it, what I was doing, as rhythmic as I possibly could. How could you make it, so there's a lot of things on records I've played on where you go. It's all from that, kind of old-time fiddling thing, just updated a whole bunch. Here's more of the old-time lick. Now, something I'm going to get into at length on the thing where we talk about bowing and the entire world of bowing and fiddle playing. And it's something that, as I've gone along, I've used more and more, which is rather than to play a tune like... more intricate in the left hand, I've actually gotten to where I think about ways to do it with rhythm and less with notes. So instead of would be, a lot of left hand, listen to this. And instead of you have to know how to do both, but it's kind of got back to thinking that by using Fire on the Mountain one day, instead of I got to thinking more, what's a way to really make the words and just the bare bones melody come out? And I came up with this. And you can even do it, like we used to do fiddle tunes for a theme, like, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. And it really sounds like the way old-time fiddle players played in the 20s and 30s and 40s before they got more into the long bow build.